Okay, so I've got a reasonable amount laid out in plan, and you can see there the shell of the building coming together. Now I want to start thinking about what's going to happen with my ceiling, whether we're going to have a ceiling or not. I'm going to have some elements there, like some lights and air conditioning, whether we have an actual ceiling or we have the exposed elements there with the ceiling removed, but we still need the elements that you would have normally in a ceiling in a space like this. And so for that we need to know how to work in ceiling plan in Revit. And I will show you how to make a ceiling, but also how to work with these elements that you can create without having an actual ceiling. And that's what I've added here, just a few elements from the System tab, such as the air conditioning ducts and the air terminals and things like cable trays. So, okay, I've just gone to a fine view so you can see there that you will get the detail in that you might be after for an interiors project, and I'll do that here as well. Okay, so those things are really useful in Revit, even though they're primarily there for engineers, mechanical engineers and people like that. You can use them for interiors projects just to get that sort of industrial mechanical look that you might be after. Okay, so I'll show you how to create those elements in a second, but firstly I just want to again show you how to work in ceiling plans. And so the key to it is thinking about which ceiling plan you need to be looking in. And so here I have a ceiling plan for the floor level I've been working on. There's also a ceiling plan for the ceiling level, and notice how the only thing I can see there is the reference planes and the grids. If I look into my section, you'll see why. It's because this ceiling level would have a cut plane, or the view anyway, would have a cut plane set above that ceiling level about here, and they'll be looking up into empty space. So I don't need that ceiling plan. I'm going to delete it. It's not needed at all. And I definitely don't need a ceiling plan for this level above. Level 10, we're not going to be showing anything there. So I'll keep the floor level just because I might want to work on it at some point. But otherwise, I'm going to delete that ceiling plan for that level as well, just by right-clicking I can delete it. So we only need one ceiling plan, the one for the level below our ceiling, which is this floor level here, level 9 floor level. So I'm going to open that up, and then we can see those elements I've put in there, just so, but I put those there just so you can see something above our floor level. But now I'm going to go to the level below, just so I can select my floor, and I'm going to go and use the copy to clipboard button in the clipboard panel there. And then I'm going to choose paste, align to selected levels, and choose the level above. Okay, because even though we're not going to show anything much on that level, I still want to show a floor there at least, so that it shows something in my section. So in my section view we've got a floor here. We'll tidy up the walls later, and I might even extend these walls up a little bit higher to make the section look a little bit better. And I'll probably extend the walls down a bit as well. So I'll definitely need that floor there. And we'll probably also see it in our 3D views. If you're going to have an exposed ceiling, or an exposed void where the ceiling would be, then you've got to see the bottom of that floor. So that's what we're seeing there. We're actually seeing the slab. It's been painted, and you can see some of the pipe work and other things that have been coming through. So we probably see that. So in my 3D view, I can see it in my perspective view. But if I go to my ceiling plan, I can see it because I know how this view is set up, and I sort of make sure you know how to change this. If you don't see it, it's usually going to be down to your view range settings. So remember, with the view range, you can set the cut plane height, and I'm going to maybe change that. I'll just make that lower. At the moment you can see it's on 2300. I'll leave it there for now. I'll come back and change it in a moment once I've got something that'll show you the change. But I'm going to put this top setting to what's often the default, and that's the level above, and the same for the view depth. And so notice how now I can't see that floor anymore. And that's a common setup you'll have when you first make a new file. So if you want to see things that are higher up, when you go to view range, you need to change that top. And I'm going to also put in a door here just so you can see. Okay, now I've put a door into that wall. I can see it in my ground floor plan. But again, in my ceiling plan, I can't see it. So I've got those two things missing. The door here, which is below my cut plane, and then the floor, which is above. So again, it's all about that view range setting. So back to here, view range, edit. So the top, you've got a few options here. You could set it to the level you want to look towards. If you're only working with a single level in your project, it might be easier just to set this to unlimited. So you see everything above. And that's often a good option. If it's not a multi-story project, I would just set that to unlimited every time, pretty much. And then the view depth needs to be set at least as high as the top. So usually you can just set that to the same as you've set the top. So I'll set that to unlimited as well. Now press apply. Now I can see my floor again. I still can't see the door because my cut plane is all the way up at 2300. And that's above my door height. My door is probably 2100 high. So I'm going to bring that down to 1800. Apply. There's my door. Right, so once you can control view range, then it'll make it a lot easier for you to work in your ceiling plans. And they're really important for interiors, especially because you often need to do a lot of lighting design and other things associated with the ceiling. And often you'll go as far as designing the entire ceiling. When you're doing shopping centres and things like that, you have those complex vaulted and curving ceilings. And they're actually, you can be really creative with those, but they're fairly easy constructions to understand once you know how a suspended ceiling is built, because they're all just hanging from the floor structure above, and you can do virtually any shape you like. And again, you can model those things fairly easily in Revit and show them really clearly in your ceiling plans. Okay, so I better show you then how to make a ceiling. Now we can see everything clearly in the ceiling plan. You should make your ceilings usually in a ceiling plan. So I'm just going to put in some generic walls just to enclose a bit of a space here. Might go back to my original floor plan view. And then with the wall tool, I'll just use some just generic walls here. Let's go to wall centerline, and I'll just do some things in between the columns just to get a very simple space set up. Okay, so now I want to make a ceiling there. So I'm going to go to my ceiling plan. And so I'm just selecting my walls so that I can show you the height. So the height here at the moment is going up to the next floor level. So I was going to show you what happens when I make a ceiling when the walls go up that high, and I'll just show you them in section. Okay, so you can see the walls there go up all the way to the next level. I can bring them down to the bottom of the floor there, but don't need to worry about that right now. So with the ceiling tool now, you can set a height. So when you make ceilings, you need to set a height usually above the floor you're working on, and you can set it either by typing in a height here, or you can just choose a level. So I've got a level for my ceiling, so I can just choose that and then set the height above that to 0. So that's probably what you'd want to do for this project. And then over here now, you can see it's giving me an error symbol. So it doesn't want to find that room, even though it can probably find these walls, it can't find this one. I'll just show you what would happen if I bring that down a little bit. Oh, here we go. It's finding the space. It's just struggling for some reason. Okay, so I wanted to show you, it will usually detect a room like that, but not always. So that automatic sealing option, when it works, it's good, but it's not guaranteed to work all the time. It's usually because of your ceiling height, but not always. It's also the walls. So if automatic sealing doesn't work, you've got the other option next to it, sketch sealing. So you need to know about that one. Like I said, automatic sealing, if it works, is good, but when we go to sketch sealing, then it's just like making a floor or a roof. You can just draw the shape you want, and I'll use pick walls here just to pick those walls. Join the lines together, so just like a floor, we can go through the columns for now, that's okay. So it's just a rectangle, but then we've got to check the height. So let's put it back to my floor level. I'm just going to change that to ceiling level. Tick to finish. We've got a basic ceiling there. Now remember to select that ceiling. If I go to the edge there, it's probably going to give me the wall, but I can use tab to cycle through until I get the ceiling. You've got, if you want a standard ceiling grid, you've got an option there to set that. You may not want that, they're pretty ugly, but might be something you need in a certain area. And maybe if you're doing a amenities room or something, I don't know. And then when you place lights, let's go back to a plain ceiling, that's always an option. People think if you have a ceiling grid structure that you need to put a ceiling grid in with ceiling tiles, but you don't. You can easily affix plain plasterboard to any grid structure. So with this sort of setup, you could easily have a plain ceiling in some areas. It doesn't have to be ceiling tiles if you do want to have an actual ceiling somewhere. So I'll go back to plain. Notice you've got this basic ceiling here. I'd just avoid those. You don't really need to worry about those. So just the ones under compound ceiling. So I'll go back to plain. Change it to shaded so I can see where the ceiling is. And then I'll just get some light. So by going to component, now I can go to load family. And then lighting, architectural, internal. And you see there you've got a lot of basic lights. So all of these down lights, and then the others that are ceiling lights, also the pendant lights, they're all ceiling hosted. So you need a ceiling to use those lights. If you don't have a ceiling, if you're going to try and do this sort of setup, you can't use those lights. Revit just won't let you place them. So I'll just choose a pendant light for now. And I know I can easily place them in this area because there's a ceiling there. I can't place them out here because we don't have a ceiling. So remember, Revit's not just a 3D modelling program, it's set up for building systems and documentation. And that's why things need to be hosted by the correct thing. So I know at first it can be a bit frustrating if you're used to other 3D modelling programs, but you know, Autodesk have other programs to do things like that. So here we've got the space and the ceilings there have come in without a problem. But if you want to have lights in the other area, essentially you're going to have to make your own lights. Now, they're not very difficult. You can easily make your own lighting families. But you know, probably at first you'd want to just set out the space you're going to use for them, make a real decision about you know, what sort of lights you're going to use and exactly which areas need to have them before you go and try to make them. And then also remember, like I said, you've got the things on the systems panel which will give you some of that other detail, so the things like the ductwork there. If you've never done a design for a space like this, it can be difficult to know all of the things that are typical in this sort of ceiling void area. But maybe just to give you a basic idea, it is mostly air conditioning you can see there. You've got some plumbing elements, so you've got definitely some I've forgotten the technical term, but basically some pipes coming through the slab there, so maybe a few of those wouldn't hurt just to make it look a little bit more realistic. But most of what you can see there is air conditioning ducts, and then you've got the cable trays here, which are just electrical cable trays for the services mostly. So for things like the lighting and the other electrical services that would normally be recessed in the ceiling. And you can find those on the Systems tab in Revit. So ducts, I'll just quickly show you, they're fairly easy to use. If you're just doing rectangular ducts, they're one of the easier ones. So just like ceilings, you need to think about the level they're going to go onto, and if you have an offset there, so I might want this to be above my ceiling level, so I can say maybe let's try 500 or 400, so it's above the level of my lights and everything else are going to go on. And I'll just draw a line in my ceiling plan, and I should see that straight away. Now, where they're difficult is when something like that happens, when they try to connect. Now, I'm not going to go, connecting them is quite complicated. You need to get your levels set up properly and all your heights need to match. It's better with 2017, but it's still difficult. So what you might do instead is just draw them with a gap. And now I can come back and stretch and just try and get it as close as possible without it overlapping. There we go, it's still trying to join it for me. So I'm just trying to get that a bit closer. Remember, you're not trying to design an air conditioning system here, you're just trying to get it to have the look of one. There we are, so that's overlapping but not connecting. Oops, not there. Okay, so you can see here, that's the one I've just drawn. Cable trays, the same thing. So you've got, in the electrical panel, you've got cable trays. So I'll just draw another one through here. Again, you need to have the level set, and then think about if it's offset from that level. So this might be maybe 100 mil above that ceiling level. Again, we'll just put in a line here. Now notice, I can see the detail there. When you first draw them, they might look like this. So if they look like lines, that's because of your detail level. When they're in coarse, they will just come up as lines. If you change it to medium, then they'll show as blocks. If you change it then to fine, then they'll show exactly the way they look in real life. Okay, so notice how already it's starting to look a bit more like what you can see there. But just to finish up, I'll show you what will happen if you try to put lights in there. So back to component, and I'll choose another light. So any light really, especially the ceiling ones. Let's just go for a downlight, a recessed downlight. Okay, it just won't let you place it in that area. So maybe one you could use just to get started. I'll go to component and load family. Back to lighting, architectural, internal. You have studio lights. Where are we? Studio lights. Studio lights are just floating lights. So I'll just place one or two. And that means they'll just render as globes of light. But later, when you have time, you can then model some extra detail in there. Oops. And also change the direction that they emit their light. So I'll just show you, if we go to interior artificial only, you'll see that they emit the light evenly in all directions, in a sphere, in other words, or omnidirectional. Okay, it shouldn't take too long to render. So you can change it so they emit the light downwards, so they diffuse the light in that direction. Okay, so notice how it's going up, down, left, right, all directions. We'll make that a bit brighter so you can see. Okay, so again, you can change the emitting direction of the light. I'm just going to select it and show you. It's fairly easy. Selecting a light there, edit family. There's my light source. I'm going to go to light source definition. And it's on point at the moment. I might change that to rectangular, so it's a bit more like these lights. And then I'm going to change this to either hemispherical, which will go down only, or spot, which will give you a more controlled, focused light. Either would work there. So I think even hemispherical is okay here. Okay. And now, just want to make sure, if you're going to do that, that you save as with a new name. And I'll just save this somewhere here for now. So I'll call this rectangular downlight unhosted. So the main thing about this light is that it can be floating anywhere. And I know it's a bit frustrating not having lights in the library that that can work without a ceiling. But again, it's just the way that the library is set up. So fairly easy to change. You can go to family types here if you want to change the size of that rectangle. So let's say 400 by 400. Okay, so if you missed that one, it's this button up here. Really important when you're working with families. Okay, so this one here. Save the file again if you make changes. Load into project. And I'm not going to click anywhere to place a new one. I'm just going to go to my ceiling plan, choose those two studio lights, and then in properties here, choose my new rectangular downlight unhosted. Later on, I'll model in some sort of light fixture around that. But the last thing I'll just show you here is that in section, I can lift that up. Just using the up arrow, I'll lift those lights up a little bit higher. And then show you now if I go to my perspective view and render again, instead of having light going up, we should just have light going down. There we go. It's bouncing up a little bit, but it's not lighting up that area. Okay, so have a go at some of those things, and hopefully you can start to work with the ceiling. It sounds like the ceiling's a pretty important part of this design. And then next week we can go further into modelling and creating some of the, probably, the fit-out elements you'll need, the workstations and furnishings and other things like that.